Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. I'm your host, Brian Peters. Probably my favorite podcast to date. I have Michael Rodriguez on today. He is a Special Forces Green Beret that has performed 10 deployments, as well as currently the president and CEO of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. We opened the podcast for the first 15, 20 minutes talking about how he's moving the needle. What gets lost on the podcast is that he's pushed this rock up the hill for 4 years, cut through all the red tape to get 2 bills passed and make this memorial possible. We talk about what the memorial is going to be, how inclusive it's going to be for all experiences and branches of the military, those who served and those who supported it. Then the conversation gets absolutely incredible. One of my favorite conversations to date for sure. We touch on the violence and peace spectrum, how violence is necessary for peace. And if you followed along the podcast, you know I love that conversation. And then that bleeds into a bunch of branches of different paradoxes of performance, but also the balance of humility and hubris, how to identify it, when to be aware enough to implement both. Then also it gets into the balance between coaching, how to identify experts, how to self-evaluate yourself as a coach. And then we have a couple really cool conversations about suffering, how to reframe it, how to use it and embody it for movement to where you want to go. And then we end off the podcast in a magnificent way where we talk about the art of living and the art of high performance. There's nuggets throughout the podcast. His perspective on life, his experience in life is all electric. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do too. All right, boom. Rod, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, brother. Really excited to chat with you today.
Dude, I'm super hyped to talk to you too. You're one of my favorite people to talk to and message with, just because one, like obviously we elaborate pretty deeply into the violence and peace spectrum, which I love talking about. But then just like the history you apply, even like the message yesterday, like the history you apply just at random, just energizes me, and it's fun. And I also I've just from talking to you, we kind of have the same passion for the quotes and like the logic landmarks of quotes and history, and I just respect that on top of everything else you've done in your life. So I'm just juiced up to talk to you.
No, I love talking with you, man, and thanks for queuing in on that randomness, because most of the time it's just like, oh my gosh, it just hits you and you're like, all right, yeah, this makes sense right now.
Well, just yeah, I like, and people all like, I have some like college buddies that poke at me and just for like all the Instagram quotes kind of deal, influencer world. They always joke with me, but like literally, like I think in quotes at times, like when I'm in decision points, and it's like, okay, this historical logic that has lasted the test of thousands of years, whether again it can be biblical, it can be Stoic, Roman, whatever it ends up being, but like that ends up directing me in a way that's has supported me so far. So I'm not going to abandon it, but I just think I think there's power in that, and I think that you appreciate that. So I vibe.
No, I do as well. Like whether it's Aristotle or Clausewitz or Sun Tzu, or even some more pretty significant quotes that have application today, whether it's Jordan Peterson or even something Joe Rogan might say, right? All those things have applications, today, and I always remember like when I hear someone say something, now there's a lesson in it, but I always remember like what Bruce Lee said, right? Like he said, adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specific to your own, right? Yeah, Bruce Lee said that. So when I take those quotes, I'm like, all right, that's what they meant. How can this apply to me right now in this moment? That doesn't, but this does. Now I'm going to add my dos centavos, my sauce to it, and then apply it forward. So yeah, there's a lot of education out there if you just open your eyes.
Yeah, like old problems have old solutions. I say that a lot on the podcast, and I've said this I think recently too, where there's an artist that I had on here. He's a football player now, artist Arian Foster, but he said like the system in music is kind of like you take initially, and then you create your own like spin off of what you've taken or stolen, and then you innovate. And like the human perspective is always going to innovate, because everything's innovative to you because it's your first time experiencing it and applying it and creating off of it. But I just think that always applies. But so on the podcast, we usually start off with the same question to everybody. The podcast is called Chasing Edges. Where in your life are you chasing edges right now? Where are you learning? Where are you growing?
So I'll talk professionally right now. So, I'm the president and CEO of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation, and we're building a national Global War on Terror Memorial in Washington, D.C. That's something, there's a lot of firsts that we're doing. So we're building a war memorial to an existing war. Yes, we're not in Afghanistan, but brave men and women are serving and fighting and placing themselves in harm's way in the global war on terror today. So that's something different. But then the nature of our approach is so broad, diverse, and inclusive that we're recognizing not just those that didn't come home, but how we serve. So we've kind of, I don't want to say we've challenged the memorial, like what people perceive as a memorial. Everyone thinks like a wall or a statue or something, but we're really pushing it to even the next steps and further levels of challenging people on what it is and really focusing on the educational aspect of it, and even to the interpretation level, right? So an interpretation facility is generally a museum. Where we're building this, we're not going to put a museum, but adding what's capable today to take it to that next level with the digital layer. We just briefed Zahirin about it earlier this week. So this is the first time I get to share it publicly. We're really looking into the AR, VR, XR world with regard to a memorial and being able to connect people. And that's never been quite done with that. And despite, throw a little AI in there and interviews and data collection and kind of, so really just as far as chasing it, there's a lot of experts in this space, right? But we're really, really pushing the limit and on that, not really the limit, just challenging people. If you challenge people, you're going to push them past the edges, like you do all this. I listen to podcasts, read everything you guys, everything you put out, man. I'm like, oh, it keeps me on azimuth. But professionally, that's probably the thing we're doing. What kind of set me on that azimuth was, so in November of 1982 was the very first time we had a national war memorial. That was the Vietnam Wall. Kind of crazy to think about it. We existed as a nation for 206 years before we built a national war memorial, right? 82, 206 years.
Yeah.
So when that occurred, I have a cousin on that wall, and nobody on that day of dedication, 40 years ago could have forecasted that 40 years from that day, or heck, even 20, 30 years from that day, I could go there with some Star Trek device in my hand and find my primo, my cousin that is on that wall. So, when I thought about that, I'm like, wow, let's think about what I can't think about. So bringing in experts and chasing the edge, like really, really pushing people with regard to that. And to my knowledge, I mean, I've been doing this for 6+ years. This is my 24/7, 365 at this point. I don't know if anyone's ever done that before, but be doing it on the nation's front lawn is pretty challenging, and I'm excited to keep challenging people.
Yeah, for sure. And that intrigues me because I think I'll pursue history if it's convenient, like as far as museums and memorials and stuff go. And then obviously we talked about it briefly before the podcast. I got to do that. And the cool thing is we're both doing a ruck through Washington, D.C. on Memorial Day this year, which was outstanding. But I got to stop at all the memorials and see it. I haven't been to D.C. since I was a kid, so it was really cool just to go into it with no sleep, rucking alongside active military and veterans, and actually get to feel and understand and have conversations around the power of a memorial, what it means. Like, even though they weren't part of it, they're part of a tradition and a history of service. And so it's really cool to it just helped me understand, empathize, find a way to push the needle forward as well myself. But it was just, but since you are actually pushing that forward and breaking down walls, and again, so I'm just intrigued personally as far as the experience that you're going to create there. Like, so is it like as far as going to be videos, interviews, obviously the ability to find names, is it going to be like are you going to help like understand the service? Is like the VR like just got my wheels spinning as far as are you gonna take me into war zones? Like
okay, so a lot of this is still in development, and I can share the concept at this point.
Yeah,
I can share that, but really what we're trying to do is connect people, educate people. Because let's throw some data out right quick.
Yeah.
So during World War II, we had 11% of the population serve. During Korea, 7%. During Vietnam, 4%. At any given time, right now, in uniform, we have plus or minus, actually less today, less than 1% serving. And we've had less than, in the current conflict, the 21+ year war we're in, we've had about 1% in total set foot serve in the battle space of those in uniform, right? So if you look at it, we've kind of created somewhat of a warrior caste. Now, when I look at those numbers, I don't really look at it as like, oh my gosh, there's not that much patriotism. But I look at that, I'm like, wow, that's amazing that we have developed as a nation to where the warfighter aspect of this nation is in entirety doesn't have to be 11% like it did during World War II. I look at that as a point of pride, right? However, consequence of that is there are very, very few people that actually do that, that have that skin in the game, right? So not that they think any different or they're, for whatever motivations there are to serve or not serve, that's irrelevant to me. What we want to do is educate everybody, because unless you're part of that population, you have no idea that what the millions have given to the hundreds of millions, right? That are unaware of that. And personally, I think it's a shared duty we all have to honor the service and sacrifice of all the brave men and women who step forward to defend us. They don't do it for accolades. They darn sure aren't doing it for money. I'll tell you that. I did 21 years. I didn't get rich serving in the Army. They're not doing it for whatever their motivations are, right? They're doing it for us, for love of country, get college, whatever it is. The point is they're placing their lives in harm's way for all of us. So you and I can have this cool podcast, right? Have the technology to do so. So I think it's our duty to at least honor them all and recognize that, but also extend it and turn it into an educational aspect, not just honor the service and sacrifice, but really how this nation fights wars. So how we're fighting this war is very different than any other war prior to. So here's another data point I like to throw out. During Desert Storm, the ratio of non-uniform individuals to uniform individuals on the battlefield, when they really started collecting this data, was 50-1. Today, that is 1-1. In 2019, the Department of Labor did a study to try and figure out how many non-uniform individuals lost their lives in support of or serving in the global war on terrorism. Now, while we are over 7,000 KIAs, depending on which statistic you look at, we are over 3,400 non-uniform individuals. Now, I want you to just pause for a second, digest that number, and be like, holy crap, that's almost half of our warfighters. And I know from my experiences and what I did in uniform, we have warfighters that aren't in uniform. We really do. I used to go on target and we'd have 3-letter agency guys with us going on target, hit the breach point, run in, they're in the stack, they're just right behind me doing something else. Once the site's secure, they have a job, I have a job, we do the job, we get out of there. But a lot of people don't know that. So there's an educational aspect in this memorial. So to taking it to the digital level, the reason I want to lay that foundation, so I explain where we're going with the interpretation.
No, I already see what it's powerful in understanding, anyways, and closing the gap on that education. It just again, it will increase understanding across the board. And
absolutely, yeah. And so we want to be able to do that without putting up a museum, because museums I love going to museums. I'm like a museum junkie at this point. I've been to DC. I'm in DC a lot. And I go in and there's some of the guards that know me. I mean, I just love that. I love art. I just want to learn. I know I don't know a whole lot, so I'm trying to learn more every single day. And museums are a great place to do that. So we want to be able to do that and connect people. And, you don't necessarily have to go to DC to experience this memorial. All right. So, and what was really important for me to provide that opportunity is my grandfathers who served during World War II passed. They weren't able to travel and they never saw their memorial. My father, who's a Vietnam veteran, has yet to go see the Vietnam Wall. But I think he should in some form or fashion. Now there's a traveling wall and he's seen that when he went to Las Cruces, New Mexico. That's where we're from. But he didn't go there. So I think it's important to be able to provide that opportunity. And some people have, whether it's health, travel, financial reasons, whatever the reason is, they should be able to experience this, and while we're recognizing our most sacred stakeholders, our brothers and sisters who never came home, we're also recognizing the service of the family. So in my 21 years of service, the most difficult deployment weren't the 10 that I did. It was watching my then 19-year-old son, who's in the 82nd Airborne Division, deployed to the Helmand province of Afghanistan to perform a very similar mission I had performed some years prior. That broke me in half, and I would have wished I could have traded places with him, but I couldn't. The baton had effectively been passed on. Now, when I say that, I have to remind everybody, we're not like a unicorn family. There are tens of thousands of families like ours. That's why we have that 1% of people that are serving. Apple trees make apples, right? That's just what it is. So, I want to be able to do that. So we're recognizing everybody that has served and the broad impacts. If you go to Washington, D.C., if you look at The Vietnam Memorial. I'll use that one as kind of the start point. I think it's awesome they did that. So they what they have, I mean, that's a lightning strike moment. I mean, I can't, I mean, that set the tone for everything. They were the first. It's phenomenal what they did. But then following some years later, and it's a memorial, it's actually one of the most moving memorials for me personally, is they have the Vietnam Women's Memorial, right? It's a separate memorial. A few years ago, they authorized the building of a World War II memorial for efforts on the home front, right? The Rosie the Riveter, all those that supported the effort. They offered a building of another one. So with all this being said, why not do it all together? Why not be as inclusive as possible and do it once and do it right? Not that they did it wrong. I want to be sure I say that correctly. You know, those are people I work with and I know them all. I'm not talking bad about anybody, but we've read everything. I've read everything. I've seen what they've done, and we're just trying to do it our way to build the most broad, diverse, inclusive, sustainable, and interactive war memorial that has ever been created.
Yeah, dude, that's incredibly incredible. That's well, it just obviously I think it's a worthy cause, worthy of your time, sweat, effort, the frustrations I'm sure that come alongside of it. So it's I'm excited to see what comes out of it for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to keep moving, pushing things forward, as you said, push that rock up that hill.
Yeah, and we'll share. I'll have some posts alongside this so people know where to see the foundation and how to support it, et cetera, too. So see what we can get rolling there. But yeah, then so I mean, did you touched on a lot there, like just like in the undertones of how you're going about your action now in that realm. It's fun that one of the first things is this keeps showing up just in my life as of right now is the kind of the paradox of like the more you learn, the less you know, because like I would definitely not put you in the category of a stupid human being in that realm. Like you're a constant learner. Like you actually articulated that right there, that you're going to eternally learn and grow and pick up another burden to bear in the realm of responsibility, which you're doing right now. And then obviously I know some of your physical makeup, like obviously you pursue physical fitness, like you still stay pretty in tune with your ability to distribute violence and things along those lines. And I guess in that realm, as far as like the learning side of life, what in particular there on top of the Global War on Terrorism Foundation are you pushing forward right now, like, or trying to maintain, or is there a balance there where you're keeping that relevant in your life?
Absolutely. So that's why I talked about my work, right? And I said professionally, right? That's my professional pursuit.
Personally,
but equally as important to me is my personal life. Now, if anybody like, you know, that I'm saying, hey, go check out my Instagram or my LinkedIn. No, anything. No, I'm not saying that. Like, don't go follow me, right? This is not a plug, but I'm gonna use this as who I am, right?
Yeah.
If you go to read it, go to see who I am, you know, and I say it in Spanish, you know, I'm a father, I'm a son, you know, I'm a grandfather, I'm a veteran, and I'm a brother to many. If someone really wants to go in and see what I do and all that stuff, then okay, great. Go see that I'm trying to do this, you know, the memorial and all that other stuff. But primary to me, what supports my efforts and allows me or provides me the fuel to do what I'm doing and what we've been able to accomplish as a team. I don't want to make it think like I'm doing all this by myself. Is my focus equally, probably maybe a little bit more on my personal life. And with that is, you know, I was blessed to serve this nation for 21 years, and over my time of service, I got to see a lot of different things. And I learned, you know, first and foremost, you know, that you have to be capable in order to want peace. You must be absolutely capable to provide peace, not just for yourself, but for those around you. If anything, to create a buffer, right? So, you know, we're tribal in nature. Humans are tribal in nature. So I learned that at an early age when I deployed to Somalia in 1993 as a dumb 18-year-old. Like, I think I was the dumbest private the Army ever had. Like, literally the dumbest private the Army ever had at that point. I didn't know anything. I heard the stories from my father. He talked about Vietnam. He didn't talk about the war. He talked about those he served with. Heard the stories about my grandfather who served in World War II. They didn't talk really about what they did. They talked about the men they served with. And that's what drew me to that familia, that bond that they had with these men. I would hear stories about these men that my father and grandfather and uncles would talk about with reverence. And I was like, I want to do that. I'm going to come from a very cultural background. I'm Chicano, grew up on the border with Mexico, and familia es primera, families first. So I was like, who are these family members I've never met? So anyway, I say that because that's what drove me to that. But what I learned immediately was if you're not capable of providing that safety to yourself, what good are you? Like, I think Jordan Peterson probably says it best, you got to be a monster, his monster quote, right? You got to be a monster. You have to be capable, but you got to keep it in check. That's a good man, right? That's a good individual. So I learned that over 21 years, and I just apply that today. I realize that we all make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I've neglected my family a lot, but I'm trying to be better. And in that, the physical aspect is the more physically active I am, the less medication I need. I mean, I don't really take any. And the more able I am to pass on what I know to my children and my grandson, right? So as my primary job on this planet, I really believe, is to be able to provide an opportunity and teachings to my sons and my grandson. I only have boys, but pass that on. So I have to be capable of doing that. Yeah, I'm the aging lion in the pride. I get it. They're getting a lot stronger and faster than me. I get it, but I have to pass it on. That's just a personal pursuit of mine. And in order for me to do that, it's a personal responsibility to maintain that level, to set that example. Like, yeah, I'm 48 years old. I think I'm in pretty okay shape for my age, at least. And I'm pretty capable, but it's not something I'm going to flaunt or talk about, or it's just the most important people in my life know that. So that's good enough for me. I hope that made sense.
Oh, emphatically it does. And but that makes incredibly logical sense to me as well. And I've wrestled with that in my own sense, where I didn't even understand the violent side of life until later in life, where and I wrestled with my own personal quote unquote toughness. Yeah, football makes you tough up until a point, but that's a whole different type of violence. It's contained, it's refereed, it's all these things. And I didn't even get into many fights until I was later on 18 or older kind of deal as well, where that's where I thought I had to learn toughness and violence on my own because it wasn't taught to me and things like that. But just to get back to your points, because you said so much incredible information there, and I love I love Jordan Peterson in general. All the YouTube videos, read his books. I think they're required reading for everybody. And it furthered my pursuit of what you're talking about, and kind of to break down what you just said in general is the professional and the personal side of it. You can't pour from an empty cup. You're not going to have energy. You're not going to be able to share wisdom. You're not going to be able to push the needle forward if home base isn't taken care of first. So that, of course, I love what you're doing professionally, but you personally, you're an incredible human in that realm, because that pursuit is strength, growth, sharing, community, tribe, even if it is in your small family. I don't think anybody should excessively flaunt it. I think social media is cool in the realm of sharing why you should be this way and why you should be capable. And I'm a believer in sharing that as well, because I think confidence and peace are really closely related. And people, the quote that embodies this for me, I've said it on here before, but you can't call yourself peaceful unless you're capable of great violence. If you're not capable of violence, you're not peaceful, you're harmless. And I think there's a lot of harmless people in the world right now that have these elevated voices because of social media, and they don't understand the relationship of violence and peace. They don't understand the relationship of capability and peace and confidence and peace. I think that's really it's starting to split the details, but I don't think a lot of people have sat down and understood that they might rely on the police force, or a lot of people unknowingly rely on our special forces, our military in general. And I've wrestled this with myself personally, and it's not an offense thing. I lose connection to the military because I take my freedoms for granted, and I've gone through that, and some of it's immaturity, some of it's just life, and it's really easy to get lost in football. It's really easy to get lost on Netflix or life in general. You don't realize all this stuff is protected, and it's protected by very capable and violent men that have this incredible heart and service to do so, whatever their motivation may be to do that. And so like I always like to, and like the cool thing about life in general, and like that's why obviously the more you know, the less you know, like, and you're in your another learning phase of your life, which one that invigorates me because you're 48 years old and you're learning and growing and defining this capability and learning how to give it back and share it. And like that's just means like there's more life for me, and that I consider myself, I say I'm super stupid all the time because of that paradox that I can push forward that, okay, like, because the more I learn about like even like the violence, like MMA and things like that, like you learn and get humbled really quickly. And the more people that experience that, the more you appreciate technique, violence, the ability to defend yourself. And like I think as same as like you were saying for your family, like as a father, like I don't have any kids, but like I would assume that most people would prioritize protecting their family, whether that's with the physical capability or obviously like home defense weapons, things along those lines. But like that makes sense to me. And so like the people that don't pursue that confuse me. And so I always ask questions and try and understand why somebody would choose to be out of shape, because like if you're out of shape, that's less energy to one, give back to your family, to give to your profession, to give to your passions. And so all that, like what everything you said is dynamite. But the quote that I freaking love and I'm going to adopt myself is the ability to provide peace. I think that's incredibly powerful. How do you kind of come up with that logic?
Well, I learned, and I think so. I think I'll be able to touch. This is my dos centavos. These are my opinions. I'm not an expert. I probably should have started the podcast this way. Is like I am an expert in me and my own experiences. Yeah. But
and that's what I'm massively interested in, because you are this incredible human.
So I think violence. When you say the word violence, I think it has a negative connotation. I think a lot of people will hear that and be like, "Oh, you can't be violent." Well, violence is necessary. Violence is a part of our life as much as happiness is, as much as nurturing, as much as compassion. Violence is necessary. We would not be where we are today as a human species if we do not have or exhibit and display and enforce violence. We wouldn't be here, right? But when you say violence, people are like, can't say that. No. You understand, violence is necessary for peace. Now, for people that, like for me and those that I serve with, and some are still serving, and those that are, that I serve with are still out there, doing the good work, delivering the good news, right? But those up and coming, or those future ones that are coming, look, they're trained that you have to be violent. You have to. I've seen it, like my eyes were like completely blown open during my deployment to Somalia. I saw that capacity of a human to exert true oppression. That's one thing. I won't get into that discussion right now, but what oppression really is, what survival really is, when you see people that are surviving moment to moment, day to day, dependent on someone else because of their greater capacity of violence. That's like, as an 18-year-old, it was, and I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood. I grew up around gangs, people getting shot right by my house. I mean, I grew up around violence. But that took violence to a completely different level. I mean, you're talking about indiscriminate violence towards, they didn't care, just the humans, right? So I think back to where I'm going with the social understanding of what violence is and where we are today, people look at it and think it's a negative thing, much like masculinity, right? Not to get into that one. That's a whole other discussion.
I got a whole bit on that now. Or this Jordan Peterson says it logically, eloquently, and philosophically, why we need men, like all levels of men, blue collar men, violent men, but the ability and the control to supply it when necessary, but also have boundaries. It's all encompassing of the human experience. But continue, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. You're exactly right. So that actually is going to help with what I'm about to say. So no one should train. So there is the capacity of, if people pursue violence for the sake of violence, then guess what? You're kind of a sociopath, right? You really don't care about what you're doing. And most people aren't, thankfully, right? There's plenty of them out there. A lot of sociopaths around, just, might be in line as you Walmart. You don't know that. But you should train for violence. You should. It's not a bad thing. It's as much as training to, if you want to run a marathon, you got to train for a marathon, right? You have to. Violence is necessary. So don't train for violence for the sake of violence. You train for violence, like you said, to enhance what you were talking about. Is you train for the violence for the sake of peace capabilities. You know, nobody wants peace more than those that have seen war. No one does. So I run into this all the time with this memorial. It happened to me at the hearing earlier in the week. Why are we glamorizing war? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is someone that has never served, doesn't know what you're talking about. I'm like, that's not what we're doing. If every war memorial that exists is a peace memorial, it really is. Why do we fight wars? Right? Like, we recognize those that serve. I don't want to get into the discussion of policy and blah blah blah, whatever. No, I'm talking about those that serve. Right? I'm talking about the people that this nation sends forward for peace. It's for peace, right? Peace, safety, security, and that's what it is. So you have to be violent. You know, and we train people to be violent. It does not make you a bad person. I'm sure people think I'm a bad person. That's fine. They got their own opinions, but I don't think I'm a bad person because I'm an incredibly violent individual when necessary, right? When necessary. Like you and I, we were chatting yesterday, and you know, I something I say quite frank all the time. I tell people, look, blind aggression is useless. Focused violence is unstoppable. Absolutely. Blind aggression is just someone losing their crap, and what are you going to do? It's kind of useless. You're not really going to succeed in your mission.
You're gonna cause more problems,
right? But focused violence is necessary it's unstoppable. And focused violence doesn't necessarily mean physical violence. It can be, if you look at it, if you focus on a problem, whether it's even in your business, a small business, or even the large businesses do it, right? They're very violent in how they do things. Maybe not physically, but they're violent.
Yeah, it's you can call it corporate takeover, but they disguise it with words like we got to be aggressive, like we got to attack our goals, like there's violence in everything we do. Anything that is attacking growth or pursuing growth has some necessity of violence, because that means change and adaptation, which means stress, which means all these things that violence encompasses.
Right, exactly. So when you're saying, you know, peace through violence, or you know, people look at those like, oh my gosh, they think like that's the yin and the yang. No, they're one and the same. They're necessary. They're brother and sister. They're twins. However you want to look at it, violence is necessary for peace. Absolutely, because violence maintains the peace. Violence gets you the peace you need. So violence isn't bad, right? But no one should. It's never cool to be cruel, right? Then you're delving into sociopathy and just being a bad person. But you should have the capacity to do so. So earlier in the year, my youngest son came to me, Jacob. He was like a gymnast for once or three. He was like a gymnast for like 6 years and played football for a couple of years. And he goes, Dad, I want to learn to fight. Now he watched me train to fight. That's what we do. His oldest brother got into Muay Thai and a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, okay, why? He goes, well, and it was like a perfect answer. You know, he was 15 at the time, and he goes, Dad, I want to be able to take care of myself. And if I have to, maybe I can help somebody else. Right. That's the purest of intent. He didn't want to say, I want to learn to fight so I can beat people up. No, I want to learn so I can take care of myself. And then maybe someday I can help somebody else.
And provide peace.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's cool. It's authentic.
Yeah,
is necessary. But like, if you don't like, again, if we're speaking to adults, which primarily are the listeners, right. It's a worthy endeavor, because at the end of the day, it's going to provide yourself security. It's going to provide yourself peace, because you're not going to, I always say, because you're like, a lot of the things we're talking about are outlier scenarios where your physical nature, sometimes your mental, like, are under attack. And like, if you don't have any capability on the violence, and you're going to be scared, you're going to be reactive. So it seems logical to pursue that. And I think some of the hardest thing is to like get over your fear and go learn something new and climb a new mountain. And then again, like, if you get closer to violence, you're going to understand it more and understand the application. And then like, obviously now there's levels to it where like self-defense is one thing. And then now you talk about defending the country. That's a whole nother level of violence. And if you can't appreciate that we put millions and billions of dollars into training these humans to have this capability, and then not appreciate and respect it, like that becomes illogical again to me. But yeah, so it's just like, I just think it's that's why I love what you're doing with the foundation as well, because like education, you're at like and I hope people love this podcast, because I already love it, but it's but like, if you can educate people on the fact that, one, like, well, this relationship between violence and peace, but also like just understanding that this memorial is a peaceful memorial, and it's honoring and it's educating all in one. Like, it just, that energizes me as well, because like now, like how many minds can you change with this platform? And like, again, like even this, that's why I love the podcast. If I get like, it just one person says, hey, I love this quote, hey, this helped me, like I'm like, that means like I'm not going to stop making the podcast, because I'm providing peace or help and support to my tribe. And whether I know you or not, like that just fulfills me. And like, it seems like you have a similar drive. And so I'm I appreciate you sharing, but like, that's the perspective on it. Is it's enlightening to me, because I'm not capable of the extreme violence that you are. So like, I want to understand that even more if possible, because obviously the ability to protect the country and take life and go into hostile territory and stuff, like that's a whole nother level of mental, physical, spiritual capacity. And we don't have to talk about that if you don't want to, but what have you learned about yourself in that category as far as like life now from your experience on your 10 deployments?
So I'll talk about this. So that capacity and the work that I did and millions of others did, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say an extreme violence, right? That's just, there's violence is violence.
Yeah.
But sometimes some of the work exacts a price, right? So understanding that would have helped me a little bit more in the past, because I'll share. I'm an open book. I'm not really ashamed about anything. I have no regrets, really. So a lot of veterans, let's talk about veterans, or just people that are put in certain traumatic situations, or certain things they see, do, or happen to them. It exacts a price. And I'm incredibly happy that nowadays it's a lot more acceptable to talk about these things. Hell, it was more acceptable, back in thousands of years ago. You can read, the Trojan War, and they talk about it, right? They talk about, what happens to those that, go out and take life, right? What happens on the battlefield, so, where I'm going with this is that I think it made me a better person. I don't regret anything. That's why I say I don't have any regrets. But understanding it a little bit more is just why I'm an open book. I talk about it all the time, or any opportunity I get. Certain things you have to understand what you're getting into, or at least be able to talk about it and share it without fear of being judged. I spent like, the wheels were coming off. You just kind of, when things happen, you just, I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. And then it catches up with you, and you never really talked about it. You never really processed it. And then you got a closet full of ghosts and shadows and things. So I wish I would have been able to understand it a little bit more and process that, which made my journey a little bit more challenging for me. But I think being able to talk about that openly is important. So, the capacity for violence, I understand now that it was necessary for peace. The more violently capable you are, the more peaceful you will become. But you have to understand that as you climb up that ladder of capability, and should you ever have to go to the nth level and just exert what it is or do what you need to do, even in a self-defense situation that happens here in the United States all the time, where someone protects themselves and they take a life. Even those individuals will face some kind of, like, even if you take out something bad, they're like, oh my gosh, I just, did something.
Yeah.
So understanding that, I think, would have helped me in my journey a little bit. So, I spent 2 months in an inpatient facility, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I say that all the time. I mean, it was like pajamas and slippers and locked doors and guards, because my capacity for violence had got to a point where I became that violent individual that I did not want to be, and I couldn't control it. I was just a violent person. I would lose it like that. And didn't want to, it had the capacity to hurt people in a bad way. So the understanding as that goes, you have to find that balance and being able to share that, right? If you're a violent individual, or you have the capacity to, and you exert it, and you do certain things, you have to understand, like, well, we have to balance that somehow, and we have to be able to process it and share it openly without fear of judgment. So that was like my personal journey with that. And once I realized that, and it was one of my doctors that told me, he goes, Rod, are you suffering? And it was my psych. And I was very angry individual. I was like, hell yeah, a little more expletives. Yeah, I'm suffering. He goes, you're suffering because you're choosing to suffer. He goes, right, everybody faces pain. Everybody faces trials, tribulations, obstacles in life. I said, those that suffer are losing the battle with whatever it is they're fighting. And then that was like a game changer. So he gave the choice to me. I accepted that pain and was part of life. It's part of everyone's life. Anybody's listening, you right now, we all struggling with something. We're all carrying something. But if we're suffering, it's because we haven't really identified the enemy. We haven't regressed it. But when he told me that, I was like, man, I never given up. I never back down from a fight. I'm like, wait a minute, you're right. Now I know what to fight. And that's what I've, been doing for 9 years. I think it was 9 years ago. I was in the hospital. So that's part of my journey. And then it allowed me to see that. Now, if I don't mean to be insulting or diminutive to anybody, that if I'm saying you're not suffering or suffering by choice, yeah, you're dealing with pain. But if you look at it from that viewpoint, then you can look at whatever it is you're struggling with, whatever you feel is weighing down and you're suffering from. Okay, I need to focus on that first, because that is pulling me away from everything. Because, I've never stepped into a cage or a ring or on target with blindfolds on. Why do we choose to do that with what we carry around inside us? But we do it all the time, because as humans, we've been programmed, particularly today's society, that we we feel bad for feeling bad, and that's ridiculous. Has anybody ever felt bad for feeling good? No. And here's a great example for you. I think I said this when I spoke at Summer Strong a few years ago. No one has ever said, like, when you're incredibly happy, right? No one has said, I'm sorry, I'm so happy. No. But what do we do if we start getting emotional? We start getting like, we start like tearing up or get a lump on our throat, and the mood change, the vibe changes, right? Where someone's getting ready to share and open up. What do we do all the time?
Apologize.
I'm sorry. Why do we do that? If you make the choice to become vulnerable in a situation, you are making the choice to grow and move forward. It's that other individual's responsibility to do, like, hey man, maybe this is a little too much for me. Okay. And then you have to respect that, right? You have to respect that. Okay, maybe this is too much for you. But if you make that choice to be that way, then you're really going to find out who your tribe is, right? Because those people that really, really, really give a shit, they're going to be like, damn, well, tell me more. They're not going to diminish it. They're not going to give you an example of something that they experienced. No, they'll shut the hell up and listen to what you have to say, right? So I think we've been programmed in a kind of a negative direction. But again, that's just my dos centavos, my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful, because I'm a believer in general that like vulnerability and authenticity just goes so far in the world of, I don't want to call it coping, but like just because like that builds tribe immediately. Like I talked about it on my podcast with Andy real quick, where like pain is an adhesive. It gives you the ability to connect with others that you've been through it, like, or that you, like, any person that's been through any type of thing that you've been through, you being vulnerable and saying, I feel that too, I've been through that, like that's a relief for the person that's being vulnerable back. It breeds more vulnerability, and it breeds the ability to communicate. But like the really interesting thing is the feeling bad concept, because like that is choosing to suffer, because like in essence, you're feeling guilty for feeling weakness, or you're feeling guilty for being vulnerable. And that is like a negative connotation, when like it's not a suffering. It's like you're solving. Yeah. And it needs the paradigm needs to shift away from, but I love the fact that, like, because same as you had that doctor drop that line on you, like I love the line, the light switches that get hit in perspective, where it's like I am and then like, so now, and then you get the light switch, but now you got to have the awareness to keep hitting it every time you get into those scenarios. And but basically, in essence, I wanted to get to the point where like that was like a good step towards what you're again transitioning through, and getting into obviously the human you are now. But what else helped in that realm of taking steps forward and I guess resolving resolving that feeling of feeling bad for feeling bad?
It was just making the conscious choice to be vulnerable. I remember it was at a Summer Strong. So let me talk about Summer Strong real quick. Everybody probably listens to this knows.
I
Bert,
talk about
Bert and the crew, right? So if there's any secret sauce to Summer Strong and Sorinex, it's exactly what we just described: the ability to be vulnerable. People go there, whatever their capacity is, however famous or whatever expert level they are, they come together and they share it. So let's talk about that adhesive, right? You just mentioned they'll share things that are painful. They'll share their struggles, right? And then there's two greatest adhesives we have as humans are, and they're absolutes in my opinion, is love and pain, right? Those go hand in hand. You can't really feel true pain for something, or I won't say you can't feel true pain, but like emotional pain is far more challenging to deal with than physical pain. But those things go hand in hand. So if you were to talk about like what's the secret, how do they do that? How does Thornex create these things? It's because they don't back down from that. They're the only ones that do it, and they have the courage to do so, right? So that's what makes them incredibly successful, are those things. So, when I see that as making that individual choice, what has helped me is I pay attention. I listen to people a lot more. It doesn't matter where they are in their life, whether it's someone that's older, I'll listen to. We tend to listen to people that are wiser, right? Time and experience equals wisdom, right? That's the equation that you really can't say you can't refute that. Time and experience equals wisdom. But I also look at children, because children have a beautiful way at assessing their life. If I think they're probably some of the greatest survivalists. They'll look at things. They're like, all right, what do I have to do to get to the next thing? Right? That's it every day. And they enjoy life every single day. I look at my grandson who's 4.5 years old, and man, that dude he wants to enjoy life. So I look at how children assess things and approach things, and I continually learn, because as adults we get jaded and we take on responsibilities and different responsibilities, and they kind of pull us away from the true view of like, man, just enjoy life, live a day to day. Because pay attention to older people, listen to younger people, right? They're less experienced than you, they're less wise than you. But then, when I was facing my own mortality, when I almost lost my life, it was just kind of like a lightning strike moment again, where I was just like, man, it could be over like that, right? It really, things can be over just like that. And I think people face that, like when you almost get in a car wreck, that feeling you get, you're like, holy crap. You don't really think about, you're thinking about like the damage to the car. Am I going to get hurt? You don't think about like, man, I might die. But here's something. The reason you feel like that, because your body's like, oh crap, we might die. So it's a very similar feeling. Mine was a little bit different. I don't really remember a lot. I remember waking up and like, oh my gosh, I almost died. And then given the environment, I got pissed, right? It was in Afghanistan. I was like, I got mad. I'm like, damn it, they snuck one in on us. But I think those things that have really guided me to be who I am, and accepting the fact, like, I don't really know shit. Like I don't know damn thing. I'm just like trying to figure it out and do my best every day. But if I'm trying to help somebody, even if just every day, if I get up and just make someone smile or laugh, or call the clerk at the gas station by their first name, hey, thanks, John, I appreciate it, and he feels like he's recognized as an individual, then I've succeeded that day.
Gosh, that is, I love every single word you just said. I was taking notes on all that, just because everything from the Sornex on is I'll start going through it, just because I think you said it beautifully, honestly, because the first thing I noted was that you denoted the difference between emotional health, like emotional problems, and physical problems. Like, it's really easy to know what your physical problems are because everything's tangible besides the brain. Like, you can't see the brain. So the brain's, I think that falls into like the emotional mental health world too. And like the emotional deal is like the intangibles. And like, that's why I push journaling, and I push like understanding and meditation and thinking, and asking questions, because your brain's going to delete and avoid things. Like, it's going to only pay attention to what could potentially kill it, or what you ask questions about. In essence, like, that's a massive oversimplification of some psychology, but in essence, so like now you got to ask questions and solve the problems and make everything as tangible as possible, where like that's in essence what you did by identifying this, that you are choosing to suffer. And so that gave you the ability and the awareness to like start progressing away from suffering and morphing that into a different momentum towards a different goal, in essence. So I think that's awesome in general. Like, I just think that's phenomenal. But then now you get into the community and the tribe of the Sornex, and the culture that Bert Soren has cultivated so preciously and has shared with the rest of the world, myself included. Can't thank him enough for what he's done for me as a human, and like as far as like my professional side and network. Like, he's he's brought me into his world, and I couldn't be more grateful. But like one thing, how he phrases it that kind of encapsulates what you just said. He demands when like you come into this culture, candid, you to be candid and curious. And so in the world of being candid, I think candid is vulnerability. It's not sugarcoating. It's not pounding your chest. It's not leading with your resume. It's being the human that you're going to be, that you truly are. And not, again, like it's just, authenticity, I think, falls in that candid nature too. So it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share your suffering. It's okay to share your pain. It's okay to share your happiness. It's okay to cultivate that in the world. And then now candid and curious is the child. The child is internally curious, and until they get programmed. And then now you start talking about the gap between childhood and wisdom. Like that's the majority of humans on the planet. And like, even when you do have wisdom at 48 years old or 33 years old or whatever, or think you have it, which you never do, because like the more you learn, the less you know, like we already talked about. Now it's like, okay, now like we can connect with every human in this transition phase. And how can we steal from the children? How can we remain curious? How can we remain, again, like it's like, I quote the book all the time, but the book Awareness is like, we all have happiness, but we pick up things, responsibilities, like you said. We pick up the mortgage, we pick up X, Y, and Z, where like we pick up relationships, all these things that pull us away from being a child, and which is truly a happy state, because they're just curious and they're in their environment. Like they don't know what a bird is until you tell what kind of bird that is. And until then, they're just curious and watching, and like they'll identify it how they want to identify it. And like, I think that's a really cool way to live. And like, that's why I always get around new stuff, new people, new conversations, because like you'll become childlike again. You pursue violence in MMA, you'll become a child really quick, because you'll get curious, because I don't want to get choked out again in jiu-jitsu. I don't want to get kicked in the leg again in Muay Thai. Like curious, that's childlike. Be a child, like pursue that child. But then also now wisdom, like it's like I always use it in like failure, like because people like, again, avoid failure, or they suffer through failure, when really like it's a paradox of life that you have to fail to succeed. So, okay, like in the wisdom side of life, can I fail smarter and can I fail faster? And then now like I'll get through this trial and tribulations to move the needle forward there. But and then obviously like just like, I mean, you've been so close to it in the realm of like memento mori, where remember you must die, like contemplating your death and being in those things that like awake you to life. Like life is very precious and very fragile. And so like in that realm, like let's think about that too, where it's like, okay, how can I appreciate life more? How can I find gratitude in what I have, where I'm going? Like, am I choosing to suffer when I really can choose to enjoy this life with suffering attached with it? Because like because you'll understand, like and everybody, I think and everybody knows that like suffering and change are like the only constants of life. I won't call suffering a constant of life, but like changes, and change can be suffering, or it can be evolving and growth. So I just think everything you said there was dynamite. But anything else you want to that pique any thoughts in your head?
No, yeah, really. I think, like what you just said, like what Bert says, like candid and curious. That's brilliant. Just being honest and curious, a childlike mind to face things. I think, as we get older, people will stop being curious because they will, and I see this a lot. I see this far too often. People will, you said it, like people are scared of their failures. So individuals will achieve something, right? Whether it's, and I'm going to speak militarily, right? Someone will achieve a rank, they'll achieve a status, whether special operations guys, whether someone like me or one of my frogman brothers or whatever, martial art guys or PJs, whatever, right? They achieve that and they achieve something great. Then they feel like they're at the apex, but there's never really an apex of life. There really isn't. You just, you get to the top of the mountain. Oh, there's another peak. Oh, there's another peak. But people will get comfortable there. And I'm sure in the strength community and in the fitness community and the professional sports community, they'll get to a status and they rest on it. And in the military, I'm going to speak again. Some achieve a rank, right? Oh, I'm good. But each of us are defined every single day by the decisions we make. If someone reads my bio, like, oh, wow, you do all these great things. I'm like, yeah, those are things I did a long time ago. I don't know if I can do them again today in this state, but I did that. But those help build the individual that's today. It is my duty, my individual duty, to take everything I've learned, my experiences, everything that has occurred to me, everything, and apply it today. If I'm not, then I've chosen not to be curious. I love that. I'm gonna use that. I've really stopped giving back to the world. And it's, as we're tribal in nature, it is our individual responsibility to continue to enrich the tribe with what I've learned and experienced. That's why I said, I'm an expert in my space of experiences. To me, I'm an expert on me, not anybody else. So I will apply what I have learned to the greater benefit of the tribe, my tribe, in the hopes it empowers or helps somebody else. But people will get to a point, I see it a lot of times with people that retire from the military. Oh, I was this. And then I'm like, oh, that's cool. What are you doing today? Oh, well, I was this. That's awesome. You retired 5 years ago, bro. What meat are you bringing to the table today? If you're not, I'm sorry, bro. There's no place for you at this table. Go find another table, right? But you have to be candid. Again, that's being candid with those people in your life or your tribe. Be like, man, you're really not bringing anything. You're really, man, I love you. I respect you. I wish you the best, but you're not providing, you're taking. I think you need to figure that out for yourself. And that's an individual journey. I'm not going to take it personally because an individual has chosen to stop living or stop giving back. My responsibility lies in my tribe and those people around me, and making sure that we continue to better each other and push each other along. That's that candid and curious. Bert's a whiz with words. It takes me 1,000 words to say what he says in 3.
Yeah, but that's his own variant of wisdom too. No, that's really cool. That's a really cool perspective on it, because I see it in the sports world all the time, where you get to a level and complacency kicks in, and it can be complacency in life and in sport. And I battled with that myself, where you think you arrive and you're entitled. And I think a lot of the world's entitled in that realm, when everybody should be humble, constantly learn, grow, share, etc. But in that realm, just because I've been in the world of paradoxes as of late with some of my coaching, the Icarus paradox, where obviously he their wax wings, and he flew too close to the sun, they melted. And in that realm, he did achieve a height, a mountaintop, whatever you want to call it, because he did fly X, Y, and Z, whatever. But in that realm, the skills and the drive and whatever you had that got you to a position don't always serve you for the entirety of that position. Right. So it's understanding that overconfidence can blind you to the necessary adaptation and changes need to be made to sustain that position, to get to another peak, or to continue to give back to the tribe. And so I really like how you said that, because that's in essence what the concept of the paradox of what it embodies, is that it's the process, it's the not arriving. It's really how I do it. I either have people identify that change, change is the only constant. So you need to identify that you're always changing. And I can't identify with the NFL athlete, the all Big Ten safety, whatever, all these accomplishments, whatever I had, they're all trash in the spectrum of life for real. But in essence, I can't identify with the titles or the accomplishments. I can only identify with my capability at the time. And so I think that's freeing. So I was never the football player. I was an athletic person that was capable of fast-paced decision-making, problem-solving, leadership, time management, strength and conditioning. And that allowed me to be a football player, experience the professional football world. But that's not my identity. My identity is always in my capability. And I think that was a big light switch for me when I realized that I was never the titles. And it's the same, I think it applies. I haven't thought it through because I'm not a father, but you have the title of father, but you have the capability of a father as well. And that's really what makes you a father. The ability to protect, to share wisdom, to love, to be authoritarian when necessary, those kind of things. Your capability makes you a father. The tangible fact that you have a biological son obviously makes you a father too. But I'm just trying to tie it all together. But I think that's nails, because I don't, and what enlightened me right there and what you said is I don't identify, because sometimes I'm around people that have had the titles or the success and the accomplishment, and I'm not identifying, but I'm looking at them as this awesome human. But are they really adding value to me right now? Or are they sharing their wisdom, or are they telling stories? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's where one of my favorite movie quotes of all time, which is again a massive landmark for me, because I identify it when I'm in groups now, is it's things from The Sopranos or The Godfather, whatever. But remember whens are the lowest form of communication. So which is savage, because like we can talk and tell story. There's times and places to share stories in life and jokes and whatever, and story tell and make everybody laugh. I think that's gorgeous in life. But also, like, if you're constantly in a group of humans that are just saying, remember my title, remember when I did this, remember when you did that. Awesome. But like, that's not serving the table right now. That's not serving the tribe right now. So, okay, like, how are you helping and supporting? If not, like, you don't get my time and my heart, in essence. So like, I think that's really cool. I'm definitely going to embody that now, because like I've rubbed elbows with some interesting humans, and that'll help kind of shape the perspective I take into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, to find humility these days, right? So that's what it is. We're talking about Icarus. It was his humility, his hubris, right? His hubris brought him down. So if he would have understood that, he could understand, like, maybe I don't use wax to hold the feathers together. Maybe use a stronger adhesive, and maybe I won't plummet to my death, within the tail. But hubris, that's what brings incredibly successful individuals down, is their hubris. They think they know more, can do more, and then guess what? No, you don't. You really don't. But then you have individuals that are some of the most influential, quote unquote, powerful people that I know, that I operate with and see, are some of the most humble people I've ever met. They would never lead with their title or what they've accomplished. They're like, hey, how are you doing? My name's Bill. Hey, Bill, how are you doing? And I've had conversations. There was a guy I knew for 2 years before I knew really what he did. And he was just an extremely very successful businessman, but very humble. Just, he's my friend, right? Okay, we're friends first, but humility, approaching that. And you don't have to be, in your 40s and your 30s and your 20s and your 60s. And everyone can be humble. And if you take a humble approach, then people more often than not are going to be like, they'll probably trust you a little bit more. And that's how you build your tribe. Trust, right? Build your tribe with trust, build that trust. And then just be humble, and you're going to learn a lot more. Because I've seen what happens when people don't admit what they know, when they pretend to know information, which is really, seems like people do it every day. I've seen people die. And that was another moment for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was a young soldier at the time. I'm like, he knew oh my gosh, so-and-so's dead because of that. Because that individual did not have the humility to admit, like, man, I don't know. Let me ask somebody. Which is why if I don't know something, I'm going to ask. I don't care. I've never been shy to admit my ignorance on something, because I've seen what happens, and it's a tragedy, So I think humility is a great way, is a strength without a doubt, but it takes courage.
Yeah. What a freaking powerful extreme to that perspective. I love that. Oh, that's so cool. Because like I again, I'm not in the realm of that price on humility, or that price on hubris. So, and like, because I end up dealing with athletes or business folks, and like the price isn't there. So like the awareness of that value isn't understood, or at least I haven't thought in depth on the character of that. Because like I try, and when I see experts now, like in my own social experiment, like I try and see if the experts are like professing and preaching, or if they're curious and asking questions still, or if they lead with the step that like, what's a good way to say it? That they know a lot, but they're still a student. Like, so I try and feel through the experts now, because like the coolest experts that I've been around will be like, they're very forthright in the fact that, hey, we don't know everything. Like, particularly doctors, like the doctors that I like, it's like chiropractors saying that like they don't even believe in chiropractic to an extent, or like we both know Eric Serrano, obviously.
Yeah, I was about to mention Doc.
yeah, but like I found out some things in the breath world that like he didn't know, because he hadn't gone down that rabbit hole, and he'll ask a million questions about it, and then he'll make me feel stupid because I haven't asked a million questions about one side of the breathing world. But I love the feeling, because now I have to go learn, or he'll or send me a patient that has problems that I can't even pronounce the name they have, and I have to solve it, or particularly help, and that kind of thing. But like those type of doctors, and I've met a bunch of other doctors in that realm too, where like they'll be forthright and say like, this medication does this, but like it's still unknown how much it'll do here, how much it'll do here. This is like this, or like a great strength coaches and stuff too. Like, hey, this is what this is supposed to do. Not everybody responds the same. Like I'm not gonna, like, this program's for 100 guys or 53 guys on the NFL roster. It's not for every 53 of the roster. People respond different. So we got to guess and check, and we got to keep asking questions and analyzing the data, and the constant research comes out and completely shatters perspective. So it's just like the experts that I've naturally been drawn to have humility as well. All I was trying to say. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, like it's not everything applies, right? I mean, really, I mean, I think I started the Bruce Lee quote, right? So you have to be humble to understand that. But oh, by the way, that quote was from Sopranos. That was Tony Soprano that said that. Yeah. But you just have to. There are people that tell stories, and that's what it's like. Hey, if someone tells you a story and they're like, "Hey, this is what I learned. I probably do it different, but take what you can." But if people tell you what to do, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this. This is how you do. They're not really respecting you as an individual. Here's an example I'll use real quick. Here's an analogy. So let's take 10-year-old Brian Peters and 20-year-old Brian Peters. You both walk up. You're identical individual, just one's 10 years older, right? You walk up to a 12-foot cinder block wall, and they're told negotiate it. Are 10-year-old Brian Peters and 20-year-old Brian Peters going to negotiate that opposite exact same way? No, based off their capabilities, right?
Yeah.
However, if I sit there and I know what it'll take to get a 10-year-old over that, and I say, this is the only way to negotiate this obstacle, and 20-year-old listens to that and takes it to heart, and he's like, okay, that's gospel. I got to do it exactly like that. Yes, they'll both negotiate the obstacle. But what did I just do? I just limited the 20-year-old, right? I just placed a cap on your capabilities, where I may have helped that 10-year-old, but guess what else I did? If I told him that's the only way to accomplish that, to succeed, to get over that wall, I've also capped his imagination on his personal growth, right? So there's an example. Not everything applies, right? If you listen to something, there's so many experts out there, right? Like, hey, do it like this, do it like this. Again, I'm going to go back to Bruce Lee's quote. Hey, take what makes sense, take what doesn't, throw the stuff that doesn't make sense, and apply your own. Right. So I think it's very important when people look at and listen to experts out there, particularly, in that space, and in our community. We got a lot of chest pounders saying, cool, man, great. That may work for you. Maybe have worked for you as an individual, but too many people fall into that church and they'll like, oh my gosh, that's the only way to live my life. That's how my life. No, man, you need to expand your horizons and take everything you see, make it your own. Because we're all different, right? We're all we're all unique in that aspect. I just, I think people limit themselves far more often than they should.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy, and how to break down expertise, and because I think human potential is limitless in general, and same as the way to negotiate a wall. Maybe tactically there's only one way to physically do it, but then now mentally you're killing creativity. Your problem solving abilities, all those things, and that's what life is. And I don't think people. I'm talking to myself too here. So that people listening, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking myself, because I forget this all the time, how freaking different every human being is.
Mm-hmm.
And I read this really cool book a while ago called Stumbling Upon Happiness, where it breaks down tangibly how different humans are and how we value, in essence, it scales down every emotion, every experience, to the fact that me and you can't even talk about, obviously we can't even talk about violence the same way, because we have different relationships and experiments and experiences for it. Same with love, same with happiness and things like that. So they tangibilize it and scale it, where it's in the book, they use if you have your entire family singing happy birthday around you, 1 to 10, what's your scale? For you, it might be an 8.7. For me, it might be a 7.1, because I have a different relationship, different experience. Maybe I haven't traveled the world. So and you have. So I know that that's really not incredible happiness, whatever. So we can't even talk about happiness the same way. Can't talk about birthdays. Can't talk about family the same way, because in essence, we're talking on different scales of happiness. So it basically just shatters and then it goes through your memory, where there's a proximity rule in your memory, how accurate you can remember things, the narratives you have, and it basically demystifies your psychology to understand that all you can do is share your human experience and eventually stumble upon happiness, because your memory is playing tricks on you. Anticipation and psychology in the future is tricking you. And so it's in essence, like, how do I get to this like peaceful navigation through life where I understand that everybody's massively different. Everybody's concept of every word is massively different. And then now it's like, okay, that should be relieving, because now it's like, I don't have to have all the problems solved. I don't have to have everything quantified. I don't have to have the perfect plan, because in essence, everybody's winging it and everybody has a different interpretation of their human experience. So this is my interpretation. I'm sharing it. If it can help, use it. If it can't, forget it and move forward, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. Something that I try to remember all the time, and I'm doing the best I can even today, is like, everyone's different. Everyone has unique experiences gotten to that point. Let's just talk about like happiness, is the study you just referred to. Everyone's different. You have to understand that. But if what makes me happy does not make that other individual happy, I have to respect that. You absolutely have to respect that, and you can't personalize it or internalize that. You absolutely can't. You know, you have to be like, okay, well, how do we get there together? How do we communicate together? And I did that, you know, when during my years of service, whether I worked with a lot of foreign nations, foreign friendly armies, friendly to us. We call it by, through, and with, right? We have to understand their social, cultural ways of communication, and then work with them, alongside, through them, and with them. But you have to understand their social, cultural norms. Now, it was far easier for me to understand that in combat, right? Applying violence, you know, extreme violence to do what it is we did. Where I've learned a lot. I mean, even recently, is I have to be like, okay, well, that works for me. It may not work for everybody else, and I have to focus on those closest to me in my life, you know, and that includes those around me, right? Like my immediate familia. You know, I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna. And it's crazy. I mean, I'm this late in my life, you know, I'm like 48 years old, and I'm just learning that, you know, and that was something, you know, that, you know, you listen to those around you and you pay attention, like, wow, okay, that makes sense. I need to be a better person for that, and apply that, you know, because then it'll eventually get to happiness, because happiness with others is far better than happiness alone, in my opinion.
I guarantee it. And I think Sornex does that really well, because Bert always pushes the shared experience over like harboring, like, and I'm a believer that help and support are not yours to keep. Like, everybody's been helped and supported and educated and whatever in their life. And so it should be an eternal give and take. It should never be a hoarding of all this help and those kind of things. There's something else there that I wanted to hit in that realm, because like, I think what you're talking about applies to every human, but like, in essence, like, the understanding that what makes you happy won't make the people you're talking to or responsible for happy as well. Obviously that's massively important in parenting, and it's massively important in coaching as well, where like, I think that's something I can always check myself on, because a lot of things have worked for me that I share, and like, I still say it to like the people I coach and the teams I speak to and things like that, where it's like, I give them basically a variant of the Bruce Lee quote, but like, I know some things are like physiological reactions to X. So I can share that. And again, but at the end of the day, like, if it doesn't feel good or doesn't work, like, tell me to shut the fuck up. You know, it's just like, that's fine. But like, in the world of coaching, just with thinking through my experience with my football coaches, there's a lot of stuff that's like, it's my way or the highway. And I think that can be changed with perspective, because I think the best coaches that I've been around understand that, like, okay, maybe this physical technique of hitting the tight end into man-to-man coverage doesn't work. He has better feet and like, he can adapt, but like, some coaches will say, nope, that's the way. So I think coaches can adopt that. I think parents can adopt that, because I see it in sports all the time. You get the overbearing fathers that want their kid to be this and do this and have to do that. And it just creates friction, because they just probably haven't thought about it, that, hey, maybe their kid's an artist, you know,
Yeah.
maybe their kid is this academic brain that isn't built for this physical competitiveness, and that's fine. And so how can we, again, detach, like, outcome detachment's a big part of what I coach and understand. Cause like, in essence, like how many targets are you really shooting at, you know?
Yeah.
Am I really, like, if in the world, like, I love the book, Zen and the Art of Archery, another, like, just really simple read, but was really powerful for me when I was transitioning. And I found it really late when I was playing, where like, I was always aiming at, or like, I had the goals of like another contract or playing in this league or like this many tackles or whatnot. But like, if I held too much reverence to that, like it was actually pulling away from every tackle I was trying to make,
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful. But like, in essence of what you're saying of like in the realm of emotions and like what makes me happy versus what makes other people happy, like you got to understand that like people have different targets, different attachments to those words. And yeah, and I'm ranting now, but like I think that's really cool.
No, it's exactly like, so we're for me, because my focus was the Army. I mean, people that serve, I dedicate my entire adult life to do that. So it's a lifestyle, right? It's not a part-time. No, that's it, right? That's your job. That's your focus. Everything is secondary. So to talk about that and finding a balance with regard to professional and personal life. So you talk about coaching. So after my last few years in the Army, I was a sniper instructor here at Fort Bragg, at the level 1 sniper course. There's only one, right? That teach a lot of people. So I was an instructor there because I was a sniper for a number of years. And I would teach. I was very understanding of my students. Now, if I have this big, massive, operator from somewhere teaching, right? He's like, let's say he's 6'5", 280 pounds, just a monster. And then his sniper partner is 5'4", 140 pounds. The fundamentals of position with engagement of a weapon are always the same, right? Particularly with a long gun and different shooting positions. But are they going to be necessarily the same for those individuals based off their physiology and size? No. I understood that. I'm like, oh, hey, here's the principles. Let's work together. I would never make this 6'4" guy shoot exact same position as this 5'4" guy, right? I couldn't, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw them both up. And I learned this after my first year, because some instructors would do that, and they had a pretty high failure rate. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm going to just let my guys shoot comfortable, apply the fundamentals. I was like strict as hell about that, but I would do that. So I understood that. So professionally, I was a very encouraging and nurturing coach, mentor, teammate, leader. That's what I was. Conversely, in my personal life, I was not. It was always my way, always. So I had a disconnect. Which doesn't make sense. It tells you where my focus was and why I'm always trying to find balance. And when people talk to me, I say, are we talking personally or professionally? And I separate the two, because they have to be. They're opposite ends, of what make me.
Yeah.
Right. So what I've learned, especially during this year, is like, I can't do that. I cannot do that. Very few people know me on a very, very personal level. It's very, very few. And I've learned, I can't do that. I have to be respectful. What I did professionally, which has allowed me to have some successes in my past, whether it's in uniform or out of uniform, what we're doing today with the GWOT Memorial, I have to apply those same things that made me successful there need to be applied in my personal life, which is why I do the best I can. For any people that really, really know me, they're like, yeah, not very many people do on that level. I've learned that, and like I said, especially within this first year. I mean, this year, I'm 48 years old. And I'm just learning. Like, oh my gosh, I have been doing this wrong. I can't be an overbearing. Hey, this is my way. I have to be far more respectful of my loved ones and my tribe,
Yeah, that's dynamite. And because I had this conversation yesterday in the weight room, because I see a lot, like I go to some powerlifting guys gym out in Granville, Ohio here, where like it's a very extreme culture. And there's very rigid standards of performance and attendance and things like that. I don't fall in that category right now. But in that realm, like a lot of people hold very high standards for themselves in the gym, and then it's not the same in profession or outside of that. So I think that's really cool. Because I think it's the same in football. I went through some similar deals to that extreme, where like I had so many boundaries on my personal life, because like it took away from my professional life, or I thought it did. I didn't understand. I wasn't wise enough to balance them. And it whatever, it had its costs, and I can say it got me to where I wanted to be, whatever. It's my own narrative. But I do think that's one of the biggest forms of wisdom that like people the high performers, I think high performers, like, and like, make no mistake, like military, special forces, all that stuff, incredibly high performers. The more I've been around guys, that the spectrum of capability is off the charts, both like physically, mentally, tactically. I think it's the high performance level is such on an extreme level that it just intrigues the hell out of me in general. But so like, obviously when I say high performance, I'm including sports, business, military, everything. I think it's like everybody has their own variant of it. But when you start talking about the art of high performance, I think every I think everybody expresses themselves in their high performance in a different way. And I love the rugby saying, like, rugby players, instead of like, let's go attack and kill everybody on the other team, like that kind of thing, they say go out there and express yourself. And
Wow.
I think that's more artistic. And
It is.
and what you talk about being a sniper, I think like rugby included, football, everything, fundamentals you cannot skip the fundamentals in anything in life. I think, and I get in that realm when I coach, where like I'll teach something in the breath world, like very briefly, and then like the next day the kid will come up to me and say, hey, I want to learn something new. Like, that's cool, but you didn't master the fundamentals yet. So I know you don't have an interest or an understanding of mastery. And so nope, we're going to do that. We're going to, just because you said that, we're going to do this for 6 weeks instead of 3, like we're going to learn here. And like, that's where like the fundamentals, I think obviously football, everything, shooting, there's fundamentals to it. But then after you master the fundamentals and understand the perspective of difference in human beings, both shape, size, eyesight, whatever the difference ends up being, after that, it becomes an art form.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things. Would you agree with that in the realm of?
Absolutely. I mean, I like the way you frame it, and it's cool. As an artist, I look at it. I hold a very strong belief that art is the purest form of communication, and art isn't necessarily paint on a canvas or words, or notes on a a guitar or piano, or like what I do. I bang, I forge things with steel, right? Art can be how you live your life. If you approach your life in an artistic fashion, and I've said it, I'll say it here, I think it's a pretty safe place, but like what I did behind and still capable of doing today behind a scope rifle is an art form. It's an art. I mean, it's taken me years, and you're talking 20 plus years to continue to refine my art. And art is a beautiful thing. Now, can it be applied in violent ways? Of course. Does it have to be? No, not necessarily. But art is, if you look at it in just how you live your life, art can be how you parent. Art can be how you express yourself to your partner. Art can be just about anything. And when people look at art, it's not just some hippy dippy stuff, right? It is really like just how you live your life. And if you look at approach your life in an artistic manner, then, I had no idea a rugby player said that. That shocks me, but it's pretty awesome. But I think it exactly just being able to do that and find that balance, and to touch on one thing you said is, finding that balance. Sometimes it is that if you can't, if you're neglecting your tribe because you're focusing on something, then maybe your tribe needs to understand that, and you need to shrink your tribe a little bit, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? So if you are focusing to be, whether it's a Division I athlete or play for the NFL or major leagues or whatever, what have you, or you're in my realm of special operations, you're trying to be a Green Beret or SEAL or one of the other folks that are out there. All right, well, how much can I do? Where's my balance? Okay, maybe my tribe needs to be a little bit smaller, right? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I can't pour into everybody. I need to decrease my tribe to focus on that. And that tribe, like we talked about earlier, will understand that. They'll be like, all right, we're going to support you. Remember, this is what I'm bringing to the table. We'll bring this to the table and working that out. So I really think life is a balance, and it's the art lies in finding that balance, right? And it's going to wane. You said it, like the way you lived your life socially allowed you, you're pretty sure allowed you to play for the NFL. That's pretty phenomenal. Me doing what I did and, limiting what I could do for my familia allowed me to do that. Right now, is there some cons to it? Of course. So there's some, some things that I'm dealing with now, of course. But it doesn't mean I can't, keep moving forward and find a better balance.
Yeah. And that's the application of life and wisdom. But like what you're talking about and we're talking about is the art of living. And I think it's absolutely dynamic, because like I also think like in the world of high performance, like in particular bouts of life, like it borders on obsession. It takes that amount of fundamental mastery time, effort, curiosity. I think high performers are some of the most curious humans on the planet because they want to keep pushing their level and their capability so high, whether it's for their own personal security, the security of their team, but also like they want to understand what their limits are. And like, that's a cool pursuit. Like it's a really powerful pursuit, and it can become addictive, and it can cost, like there's costs at the other end of the spectrum and the tribe potentially, or just like your social, physical health outside of that too. But so right. I just think all that understanding is awesome. And I don't that we've already ripped through too much time. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. No. I'm trying to respect your time because like, honestly, like I can like, this has been my favorite podcast to date. And this will be number 48. So wow. I think,
I'm humble, bro.
No, I'm honored that you hopped on and shared and were candid and curious with me, because I truly appreciate it, and I hope everybody that's listening got a million nuggets from it, like I just did. My page is just full of notes. But like, just where can everybody find you? Where can everybody find the GWOT Foundation? Just feed everybody the links or the stats or the handles.
Yeah. So I mean, we're the GWOT. Just look for GWOT Memorial Foundation.org. You'll find our website, and then from there you can find our social media platforms. I'm on my social media is the same everywhere. It's I call my sons monsters. I have to describe this, right? Like, so Monster 1 is my oldest, Monster 2, 3 are my three monsters, my three sons, and Monster 1.1 is my grandson. That's my first son's son. So I can lay out those numbers down. So my socials are Monsters Dad, MONSTERZ DAD at you can find me on Instagram and all that place, you know.
Yeah. We'll tag you in everything we pump out too, just because like there's gonna be so much to share from this, and I'm beyond excited. But thank you so much for your time and your passion for life.
No, thank you, Armand. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in here. I mean, I love you. I mean that. I'm just saying that to sound cool, man. I genuinely love you. And if there's anything else anything I do for you, reach out. You know, I'm always a phone call away.
No, that love's grown mutually and rapidly over here too. You're a stud. Thank you so much.